Ahoy there, fellow history buffs, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging headfirst into the murky waters of pirate lore to investigate one of the most elusive figures of the golden age of piracy, Henry Avery. We're setting sail with a real head-scratcher of a story, an episode from the 10 Minutes of History podcast that landed on our digital doorstep. And let me tell you, this one's got it all. Mutiny on the high seas, a king's ransom and stolen treasure, and a disappearance so clean it would make a magician blush. So grab your spyglass and your best tricorn hat as we set a course for adventure, because this deep dive into the life and legend of Henry Avery is about to get interesting. Now, Avery's early life, it's a bit of a riddle, wrapped in an enigma, and tucked inside a treasure chest that's probably booby-trapped. What we can piece together is that he emerges on the historical scene around 1659. This wasn't some prodigy of plunder, plotting a course for the captain's cabin from childhood. He started like many a salty dog, a sailor braving the unpredictable seas of the 17th century, even doing a stint with the Royal Navy. Can you imagine going from scrubbing the decks for the crown to leading a mutiny and becoming one of the most wanted pirates on the planet? Talk about a career 180. Fast forward to 1694. Avery finds himself aboard the Charles II, part of a Spanish expedition. But this wasn't some leisurely jaunt across the ocean. The crew, they were agitated, unpaid, and basically one bad day away from tossing the officers overboard and setting sail for Tortuga. And, well, that's pretty much what happened. This is where Avery's story takes a turn from ordinary sailor to legendary pirate. He sees an opportunity in the simmering discontent and seizes it. Rallies the crew, takes command of the Charles II, and gives it a rather fitting new name. Fancy. Kind of rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? The Fancy. A ship with a name like that was destined for greatness, or at least notoriety. But here's where Avery's story veers off the typical pirate trajectory. He doesn't spend years working his way up the ranks of villainy. Within months, his name is whispered with a mix of fear and awe across the trade routes, sending chills down the spines of merchants from the Caribbean to the Indian Ocean.
What's fascinating about Avery's meteoric rise in the pirate world is it highlights not just his daring, but a keen sense of timing and strategy. The late 17th century was essentially a free-for-all in the high seas. European powers vying for dominance, the line between legitimate privateering and outright piracy as blurry as a drunken sailor's vision after a night in port. Avery, he uses this to his advantage. And the fact that the Charles II was part of a Spanish expedition, well, that adds another layer of complexity to this story. England and Spain. They were locked in a constant power struggle, like two dogs fighting over a particularly delicious bone. By commandeering a Spanish ship, Avery wasn't just committing mutiny, he was stepping right into the middle of this global tug-of-war, becoming a symbol of defiance against, well, pretty much everyone in charge. This audacious move thrust him onto the world stage, transformed him from an anonymous sailor into a very real threat, a thorn in the side of empires. And it set the stage for his even more audacious exploits, but we'll get to that in a bit. His rapid ascent wasn't solely due to this one act, of course. It was the audacity and success of his later exploits, especially, and I'm sure many of our listeners have already guessed it, the Ganji Sawai heist that truly cemented his place in pirate legend. But to grasp the full weight of that event, we need to venture eastward into the realm of the Mughal Empire and the geopolitics of the Indian Ocean.
So picture this. It's 1695, and the Indian Ocean shimmers under the relentless tropical sun. A Mughal treasure ship, the Ganji Sawai, is making its way home, heavy with riches beyond your wildest dreams. And we're not just talking about your typical pirate booty here. Oh no, this wasn't just some run-of-the-mill merchant vessel. The Ganji Sawai was a prize beyond measure. Think of it as the Hope Diamond of ships, returning from a pilgrimage to Mecca, brimming with unimaginable wealth. We're talking mountains of gold and silver, chests overflowing with jewels, the finest silks, exotic spices. The 10 Minutes of History folks called it a king's ransom several times over. In fact, hundreds of thousands of pounds, and that's in today's money. Now, where was I? Ah, yes, the heist of the century. Enter Avery and his band of buccaneers, not content with just petty theft. They see this floating treasure trove and smell opportunity. Along with a coalition of fellow pirate crews, they lay in wait for the Ganji Sawai. Imagine them, these wolves of the sea circling a treasure-laden galleon. And when they strike, it's swift and merciless, a well-orchestrated ballet of mayhem. The pirates seize control of the Ganji Sawai, claiming a prize that would etch their names into the annals of piracy. But the story doesn't end there, not even close. Oh no, the aftermath of this brazen heist was almost as dramatic as the event itself. Imagine the fury of the Mughal emperor. This wasn't just about the lost treasure. This was a blow to his pride, a direct challenge to his authority.
You're absolutely right to emphasize the Mughal Empire's reaction. It was a colossal miscalculation on Avery's part, and perhaps on the part of his fellow pirate captains. To truly understand just how much they'd awakened a sleeping tiger, we need to grasp what the Mughal Empire represented at the time. This was a dynasty at the peak of its power. I mean, we're talking about an empire that spanned a huge chunk of South Asia, with a military force that could make even the bravest sailor think twice about engaging. And the Gauji Sawai, returning from the holiest city in Islam, well, it wasn't just carrying worldly riches. It carried enormous religious significance. Plundering it wasn't just theft, it was sacrilege, a slap in the face of the entire Mughal Empire and its devout Muslim population. The Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb was, shall we say, not best pleased by this turn of events, and who could blame him? He demanded swift and brutal retribution, and the East India Company, still finding its footing in the region, found themselves caught in the crosshairs of the emperor's rage.
So, Avery pulls off the impossible, becomes this legendary figure, but he's also public enemy number one. What happens next? You'd think with the might of the Mughal Empire and the East India Company on his tail, capture would be inevitable. But, and this is the truly perplexing part, Avery does something truly unexpected. He vanishes. Poof, gone. Just like that. No capture, no final showdown. 1 minute, he's the most wanted pirate on the high seas, his name striking fear into the hearts of seasoned captains and corrupt officials alike. The next, he's a whisper in a pirate tavern, a ghost story told to wide-eyed sailors. The 10 Minutes of History episode lays out some intriguing possibilities. Some accounts claim Avery tried to bribe his way back into polite society. Others suggest he might have met a rather unfortunate end, betrayed by his own crew. And then there are those who believe he escaped to some remote corner of the world, living out his days in luxury.
And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? The mystery. The lack of a definitive answer. Henry Avery becomes this blank canvas onto which we can project our own theories and desires. Let's not forget, this was a time long before Twitter and instant global communication. Disappearing, even for a pirate with a target on his back, wasn't entirely out of the realm of possibility. I mean, look at other cases from that era. There are documented instances of individuals, some even more notorious than Avery, who managed to erase their tracks, disappear into the background noise of history. Whether it was meticulous planning, a stroke of extraordinary luck, or, most likely, a bit of both, Avery, it seems, joined their ranks.
It's like Avery knew the power of a good vanishing act. He pulled off the ultimate disappearing act, leaving us all to wonder. And what's amazing is it's that very lack of a definitive ending that's kept his story alive centuries later.
You hit the nail on the head. It's the mystery. The 10 Minutes of History podcast really drove that point home.
Yeah. They said, did he really die a pauper in Bristol, as some stories claim? Or did he escape to some exotic island surrounded by riches and loyal followers?
Well, it's just begging for endless speculation, isn't it?
They said, we'll never know for sure. And that's the beauty of it. The legend of Henry Avery lives on because there's no final chapter. It's an unfinished story. What's your take? Why do these figures, straddling the line between history and legend, continue to fascinate us centuries later?
It's the unanswered questions, right? Our brains, they crave closure. They want a neat little bow on everything. When we don't get that resolution, our imaginations go into overdrive trying to fill in the blanks.
We become our own storytellers.
Exactly. We start creating our own narratives, our own versions of what might have been. And Avery's story, with its tantalizing loose ends, becomes fertile ground for that kind of imaginative exploration. And let's not forget the image of the pirate. It's so deeply ingrained in our cultural consciousness.
The allure of the pirate, living by their own code, answering to no one, with a treasure chest full of gold.
Yeah. It's romantic and exciting, this idea of escaping the constraints of society, forging your own path, amassing wealth and freedom on your own terms. Of course, the reality of 17th century piracy, brutal and unforgiving, but figures like Avery tap into that rebellious spirit, that desire for adventure.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if we could write our own endings? Disappear into the sunset with a treasure chest full of secrets.
Now, wouldn't that be something?
If you were in Avery's shoes, with a king's ransom and the world at your fingertips, where would you vanish to? What kind of legend would you leave in your wake? Something to think about, isn't it? Maybe it's the thrill of the unknown. Maybe it's the irresistible allure of a good mystery.
Who knows? But one thing's for sure, Henry Avery's story. It reminds us that sometimes the most captivating tales are the ones left unfinished.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the enigmatic life of Henry Avery. But remember, the exploration doesn't have to stop here. If you're hungry for more tales from the golden age of piracy, be sure to check out the 10 Minutes of History podcast. They've got a treasure trove of stories waiting to be discovered. Who knows, maybe we'll drop anchor in this era again sometime soon. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries that history has to offer.